Sun Devils basketball, where are we? How did we get here? And what's next?
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. Thanks as always for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. A shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Wherever you're getting your podcast, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. You can stay in touch with that content by following me on Twitter at RichieBrads36 and the podcast as well at LO_Sun Devils. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers, join today. You'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back in. I appreciate the patience as we have had some really cool things going on behind the scenes at the Locked On Podcast Network. We have been upgrading all sorts of stuff to make the product for you guys so much better, and it has delayed what was supposed to be yesterday's doubleheader to today. So we are starting the day off with basketball, and then a little later in the day we will be going back to football, and then we'll be back on a regular schedule, but you are still getting your doubleheader today. Let's start the conversation with basketball on the hardwood, on the court, the big old orange ball. What is going on? The Sun Devils basketball program has never been the strength of the university's athletics. Not even close. Like, there have been good years. There's been very good years. But as a whole, there's not really expectations at Arizona State to be anything more than solid. I've said before on this podcast many a times, and I'll reiterate it. For me, the expectation should be to go dancing in March. You are a Power 5 program, one of the biggest universities in the country, with a long tenured head coach who knows how to recruit, and you've been killing it with the transfer portal the last several years. Makes sense to me that you should be able to go to March Madness almost every single year. Obviously, there's going to be down years, for sure. But there's been way more down years than there's been good years in Bobby Hurley's tenure. We've gone dancing just 3 times. And I don't know that we're going dancing this year, which is going to lead us into, where are we? Where are we right now? Well, obviously, we are at the end of the season. There are 3 games remaining, including tomorrow night is the U of A game down at Desert Financial Arena. Go. Absolutely go. I know that Arizona absolutely killed us last time we played, but we got to show out. We got to support, especially because the Sun Devils are on life support right now. If they are going to get into March Madness, they need to find a way to win out, and even more than that. But this is where it starts, is beating Arizona, because the people who are going to put the bracket together are going to be looking for your staple win. This is about as good as it gets. Number 6 Arizona as of now. The new poll, I believe, will be coming out later today, so they may be up, they may be down, but it's a top 10 team. And it's the first place team in the conference. And it's a team that is ranked super duper high every single year. Is your arch rival. This is the game that you want to take control of, that you want to seize, and that you want to be able to look back on when the brackets are being made and they go, how can we keep Arizona State out? They beat U of A. That's where you want to be. But even beyond those 2 games, you still have your final 2 games are going to be on the road. You're going to be at USC and you're going to be at UCLA for your final game of the season. Arizona State is currently 8-9 in conference play. And honestly, I'll take 10-10. Like, I would be pretty friggin' happy with 10-10. And there's a serious, realistic possibility that they lose out these last 3 games with the way that Sun Devils basketball has gone this year. And we're going to talk about how we got to this point. But in terms of where we are now, bubble team at best. I said this a few weeks ago, this is a NIT right now. This is not in tournament. This is a program that is nowhere near being good enough to go dancing, especially when you look at some of the smaller schools that are going to find a way to get in. Like, we'll stay local, like Grand Canyon. I don't know how you can keep GCU out right now. They're 24-4, something like that. They have dropped back-to-back games, but I mean, they've just dominated their competition. To me, there's no reason to keep them out. And if it's between them and Arizona State, I don't think twice. I put GCU in every single time. In fact, if you put us on the court with them right now, I think I would lean towards GCU if I was to be completely objective. And that's really disappointing. But it's where we find ourselves. So where do we go from here? How are we going to be able to move forward? We're going to have to take a closer look at that. We're going to have to figure out how we got to this part and how we're going to proceed. We'll get there momentarily. But right now, big picture as well, not just this season. This has to be one of the years where you have to have a serious sit-down conversation with yourself and decide what the best direction for your program is for the remainder of the season, for the next year, the next 2 years, 3 years, whatever. I want to be on record that as of February 26, 2024, I am still in Bobby Hurley's court, but I am a little weary. And this is a whole other conversation that we'll have to have at some point. But I do think that you stick with Hurley for now. And I think that, yes, this has been a disappointing season, but one of the things that we talked about on this show going into the year was there's a lot of transfers. And you caught lightning in a bottle last year when you had the Cambridge brothers and you had Warren Washington that came down to the program, and everything just worked out perfectly. Were you going to be able to do the same thing again this year? And it's been mixed results. I would tell you last year's team was better. I like the future of this team more because even though you've got guys like Jose Perez that are going to be here for 1 year, you do have young building blocks like Sean Phillips Jr. and Adam Miller and Kamari Lands. There are younger guys here in place, whereas last year was kind of we just are going to go to the tournament by any means possible because those 3 did not come back. That's a very difficult situation to, no pun intended, rebound from. And it was a really interesting conversation of, is it realistic for ASU to go to March Madness again? And is it realistic to have as high of expectations? You know, what are we willing to accept after this year? And that's a conversation that I would like to start now. And I'll take a look at it later when we have more time to go through itty-bitty little pieces. Right now, we're taking a look at the state of the program as of February 26th. But we need to seriously assess where we're going from here. We'll talk about that more in just a moment, but we're going to take a look at how we got here in just one moment. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live saving game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Wherever you're getting your podcast, hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. I appreciate you guys for tuning in as always and making us your first listen of the day. Shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. And check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and you can find it on Amazon Fire now as well. Back into our conversation. We took a look at where we are. Now let's talk about how we got here. And I'm going to make this more about this season, because how we got here as a whole, I don't know that there's a definitive answer as of now, because you have to discuss what your expectations were when you hired Bobby Hurley to figure out, well, how do we get here and what has been done to get us to this point. It's a bigger conversation. How do we get to where we are this year? Little nitty-gritty stuff for Arizona State basketball. It's been a rough year shooting, just all over the place. 42% from the field, it's fine for Arizona State basketball. 65.7% from the free throw line. That is unacceptable. That is absolutely unacceptable. There have been so many games we've lost this year, including the Washington game over this past weekend. You should have won that game. It went to overtime. You could not put down your free throw shots when you needed to, and you lost that game. And it was disappointing. And it's been killing them all year long, was getting on the line, and as Jedi ASU put it on Twitter, make the throws that are free. They weren't doing it, and they haven't done it all year, and it's cost them games. Again, with the recency, you lost to Washington because you could not convert your free throws. But there's been several times throughout the year where close games could have been wins, and games that were a little out of reach maybe could have been in a better situation instead of trying to play hero ball, because you were able to, hit your free throws, keep the games a little bit closer. It's been a frustrating year. The Sun Devils, I can't remember the last time they were a good deep shooting team. 31% as a team. It is what it is. Jose Perez averaging 42.5%, but I don't know if he shoots more than 2 a game. He just doesn't shoot deep. It's not part of his game. So beyond him, who's carrying that, Adam Miller, 32.7%. Jemiah Neal, 28.7%. Frankie Collins, 29.6%. You are just struggling to shoot the ball. And that's with some guys that are going to be playing at the next level. I don't know what level. I don't know if it's NBA. I don't know if it's EuroLeague. I don't know. But I do know that there are guys who are going to be able to continue playing basketball when they're done in high school, in college. We can talk about Frankie Collins, though, and the emergence that we have seen from him this year. There was a challenge issued to Frankie after last year to become the more well-rounded player. Last year, he was averaging just under 10 points per game. He was a very good defender, and he was learning how to run the point. This year, he has been a good scorer. He's leading the team with 13.8 points per game. He's averaging 4.7 rebounds. Keep in mind, this is a 6'1" kid. This is not a big dude who's supposed to be eating off the glass. He's physical. And speaking of physical, he's averaging almost 3 steals a game. He set the Arizona State single season record for steals. He's only going to continue to pile on it with at least 4 more games, depending on how deep they go in the Pac-12 tournament. He is a monster defensively. But at the same time, there's still room to improve. He is averaging almost 3 turnovers a game. He's really, really bad on the line, 57.3%. He's not a deep shooter, 29.6%. There are still areas to grow for Frankie Collins. Adam Miller, very explosive kid. When he's hot, he's hot, but when he's not, he's not. Jemiah Neal, I hyped him up going into this year. I thought he was going to be one of the best players we've seen in the last 10 years. There's been glimpses, but not the consistency. And he entered the transfer portal last year and came out of it. I can't predict the future. It makes me nervous, is what I'll say. I don't have any information at all. This is just me being skeptical. Because BJ Green did the same thing. He entered the portal last year, pulled out, and then entered again this past offseason. I'm nervous that Jemiah Neal might decide to leave for his final year of eligibility. Frankie Collins could also do the same. We're looking at a team that could be very different next year. And we'll get to that point. We're going to kind of close out the podcast with that. Getting ahead of myself. Bottom line, though, how we got to this point is just team shooting more than anything. They have not been consistent at all. And they've not been able to knock down the easy stuff because in the paint, it's been inconsistent. They're not getting boards defensively or offensively, so they don't get second chances. They don't get third chances. I can probably count on one hand how many times ASU has out-rebounded the other team this year. They have to find a way to be more physical. They need to get bigger, first of all. But again, we'll talk about that. How we got to this point, though, to me, it's pretty black and white. You just have not been able to do the little things. You have seen steps forward. There are areas of this team that are better than the team last year. This is a very sound defensive team, and this is a team that forces a lot of turnovers. This is a team that does really good with fast breaks too. But you don't have one player. Like last year, you had Desmond Cambridge Jr., and you were like, he can go off at any given time. I don't see that with this team this year. You have consistent guys, Jose Perez, Frankie Collins, but you don't have that explosive guy. You were hoping Adam Miller would, and maybe he can be, but right now the shooting is just way too inconsistent for him. He's shooting under 40%. I mean, there's times where he's a liability. There's been inefficiencies shooting, but back to my point, you didn't have a Desmond Cambridge Jr. this year. You didn't have a guy that could just knock down threes like it was nobody's business. A guy who could blow up for 20 plus points, for 25 points. You just did not have that superstar for ASU standards. They could be there in the future. I really am still high on Adam Miller. I am. But there's work that needs to be done. Frankie Collins, I think he's just going to continue to get better. We got to work on him off the line. Who knows what the rest of the future holds? What I do know is there's work to be done throughout this team. There's a lot of changes that need to be coming. Big, small, for the last 4 games of the year and for next season. We're going to break that down in just one moment. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices from your seat, and the best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. And of course, when you buy a big game ticket with code Vegas100, you'll get $100 off. Game Time's the only ticketing app that gives you peace of mind when you purchase. See the view from your seat before you buy, and you'll know exactly what to expect when you get there. The all-in prices are going to show you the total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal before you check out, and you can buy tickets in seconds with 2 easy taps. Find exclusive deals and sponsored deals on tickets for any event that you can think of. They also have tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after. So it's the best place to get those last-minute tickets. Zone deals, You pick the section, Game Time picks the seats for big time savings, and the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Right now, all Game Time users get $100 off a big game ticket with code Vegas100. Terms apply. Just download the Game Time app and use code Vegas100 for big time game ticket. Or if you're not going to the big game, use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. One more time, wherever you're getting your podcast, hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. I appreciate you, as always, for tuning in, making us your first listen of the day, and a shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Let's wrap up this conversation with what's next. Where do we go from here? Let's first start with what's next for the remainder of the season. What are you looking to do? I think is where we start. Are you looking just to end the year on a positive note? Or are you really going to try and make a run to get to March Madness? It really just depends what you are looking for. With that in mind, we can start with this. You need to get at least 2 more wins to end the year. I don't care where they are. You need to find a way to get 2 more wins. Whether that's in these last 3 games of the regular season, you go 2-1. Whether it's 1 win in these last 3 and then a win in the tournament. Whether you lose out and you get 2 tournament wins. Pac-12 tournament is what I'm referring to. I don't know. But I think at a minimum, you need to find a way to get 2 more wins before this season is over. Before you are done for the year. Now, if you want to get to March Madness, you got to win, 5, 6 games in a row? Something like that. Because you're going to need to win your last 3 games, and you're going to have to make a run to the tournament, the Pac-12 tournament, and win it all. You need to win the conference. That'll be your best opportunity. If you win the Pac-12, I feel like you have to go in. I'm not sure if that's a rule or not. If you win your conference, if you automatically go in, but if you're talking about a team that ends up going, let's say they end the regular season. Let's go worst case scenario, and they go 14-17, but they win the Pac-12 tournament, which gives them X amount of wins to get them over 500. I feel like you should go, but it's a tough sell at the same time. Again, I'm not sure if that is a rule in the rule book. If it is, let me know. But that would be your path to the tournament, is you got to win out. You got to win however many games in a row are left. You do that, you should be able to get in. If you don't, you at a minimum need to win your final 3 regular season games. You need to beat U of A, and you need to sweep the LA teams on the road. You need to get those 3 wins so you end your regular season 17-4. After that, you probably need at least 2 tournament wins. Minimum 2. And then your best case scenario would be as a play-in for the last 4 out or first 4 out, whatever. You know what I mean? That's your best case scenario. Now, for the future, here's the good news. We've got a good recruiting class that's coming in. ASU has 4 or 5 kids for next year. A couple of 4-star kids are attacking the Valley. They're helping activate it with Coach Dillingham. They're doing what we're used to seeing them do with recruiting. They've got some young kids. So you could, let's go worst case scenario and say you are losing, what's his name? Jose Perez, Jemiah Neal, and Frankie Collins decides to either transfer or go pro. Let's go worst case and say those 3 are gone. You still have some transfers who should return. Bryant Silabonge, who's a personal favorite of mine. Kamari Lance could be back. You should be able to return Adam Miller and Sean Phillips Jr. You've got young guys on the team like Braylon Green and Akil Watson. You've got your recruiting class that's coming in. You could be looking at a young nucleus next year. Hopefully you bring back Collins and Neal, but you are really starting to look at getting younger. Whereas these past few years, it's been a very veteran-laden team. And I think that's the direction that this team needs to start going, is getting younger. Because it's just not been a winning formula for the Sun Devils. And it's been a very frustrating formula where we're seeing a different lineup every single year. The transfer portal is a very powerful tool. But building your team through the transfer portal in the basketball sense, not the best idea in the world. You still need to be able to recruit, and you still need to be able to have young pieces. That's one of the reasons why I like Adam Miller and Sean Phillips Jr. so much, is yes, they're transfers, but both of them are young guys. Both of them are going to be here for 2 or 3 years. I'm not sure where their eligibility is going to be at, but they're going to be here for the long haul. That's where I like those. With like a Jose Perez, I would have loved it so much more if that was like the put you over the top move, but it wasn't. And he has kept you in a lot of games, and he's been very good this year. I just feel like if you had last year's team and you added Jose Perez, you would have been feeling really good. But this year, you were kind of hoping that he would be the veteran that gets everything together, and the team just never fully came together this year. Is what it is. Where you go from here, though, is going to determine the future of the Bobby Hurley era. This is definitely going to be another offseason where we have to have the conversations of, should they fire him? Should they bring him back? That'll be a conversation that many will have to have. It's a conversation we'll have to have on this podcast at some point. There is going to be a very dramatic effect for the future of Sun Devils basketball for whether or not Hurley is back next year. More so than ever before, because you went to the tournament last year. You are probably missing it this year. You are looking at some really good recruits that are coming in, but you could potentially be losing several key players, some of them through eligibility, some of them could just transfer. There are a lot of dominoes that have yet to fall. And for the next 8 months, 9 months, until we get to the 2024-25 season, there's going to be a lot of shakeups. Are they going to fire Hurley? I don't know. I don't think I would. At this point in time, like I said, as of January, as of February 26th, I say you bring him back, but I will listen to the arguments. I'm not going to be completely walled off to any kind of conversation. I'm just curious, and I'm so nervous. I'll say it. I'm nervous for what the future is here. This has never been a program that's been dominant. And you're about to go into what should be the most dominant basketball conference in the nation with the Big 12 next year. Calling yourselves a seller team could be a compliment. They've got their work cut out for them. And they need to have a big conversation about, should you go with a clean slate heading into the Big 12? There's big questions that need to be asked. We know where we are. We know how we got here. What happens next? I am nervous and interested and potentially excited to see where we go from here. But where are you guys at with Sun Devils basketball? Do you think Bobby Hurley should come back in the 2024-25 season or beyond that? Who's been your favorite player this year? Why'd you pick Frankie Collins? Let me know in the comments. You can hit me up on Twitter at Richie Brads 36 and the podcast as well at LO_Sun Devils. Wherever you get your podcast, hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. And a shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Appreciate you as always for tuning in. We are going to be back a little later today as we go ahead and round out our series that we started, taking a look at the positional groups prior to the upcoming spring practices. We're going to take a look at the quarterback spot. We're going to talk Jaden Rashada, Sam Leavitt, Trenton Bourget, and everybody else. So tune in. I'll see you in just a little bit. Till then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.